So a little background info there from the sergeant, who is the cell phone expert. You heard the key word there, Cell Bright. I think it may be a hyphenated word. So that when I hear that word, that phrase, I know it's time to chat a little bit about the case before they get into some of the crazy numbers. Joseph McBride is with me again. Good to see you again this week, sir.
It's good to see you too.
Criminal defense attorney Katie Catherine Smith is here. How are you? Civil rights advocate and criminal defense attorney. How are you?
Well, I'm well, thank you.
Okay, so let's just talk about this kind of evidence in general. Katie, let me start with you. Important, yes, but you really got to watch walking over the line of too much for the jury just to get bored. That's the word, with all the numbers, right?
It's true. I mean, it's so important, and there is the importance, a lot of it is in the details, so they do have to get into it, into a level of depth, but it's always a challenge to do that in a way that's going to be memorable to the jury while still getting out what they need.
So, Joseph, what do you do when, nobody knows a case better than the attorneys involved, and sometimes to their detriment, because you think this is important. They need to know every single thing. How do you, gauge that yourself when you're the one in court putting on the case? How do you know enough is enough?
So with regard to something like a cell bright dump, you want to limit the scope of that as much as possible. A cell bright dump, if done to the fullest extent, will essentially give the government full access into every click that you've ever made on your phone. Your entire life, your brain, your soul is there. So it's interesting to find out what they're gonna see on that, because it's gonna tell a lot about the person, the way he thinks, the way he works through his material, what he sees online. I would try to limit the scope of that to a specific amount of time and keep it very limited as possible.
Okay, it's all about telling the story. You don't want to read somebody the phone book. Let's go back into court and see how they start telling that story with these numbers. I'm going to share my opinion, then ask my guest's opinion very quickly here. Katie Smith's here, Joseph McBride is here. I don't like this type of evidence per se, unless it is really backed up by the science that says there are flaws. You can't pinpoint exactly where somebody is. It depends on how many cell towers, what cross-signal interference there might be, even what carrier it might be. Katie, what do you think about the credibility of this kind of evidence?
I think it boils down to the experts you have analyzing that data, and they can also bring in lots of testimony that there is inherent unreliability. It's not like DNA, which is on its face reliable and there's statistical probability. There is some level of interpretation.
And Joseph, that's my point, that it seems to have this shroud of credibility that, hey, this is good stuff. We can tell you exactly where you were. If there were cell phone towers every 10 feet, okay, then I'd buy it. But, tell me if you have any concerns about this type of evidence.
Of course you have concerns when something comes across so damning from one side. But it's incumbent upon the defense here to bring upon their experts and tear this information apart.
And that's obviously that's part of the game. I just think it rose so quickly to this level of DNA expertise that I think it's misleading to the jury. So we're going to take a quick break, come back to more of this cell phone data, which is of course used to put Mr. Segura at the scene of the crime, or near it at the very least. Okay, now we're getting to it here. Let me ask my guest very quickly here. Joseph, let me start with you. When you're hearing words like approximately and we expect, that all I'm missing is the please, we hope we're right. I mean, it just seems like a little too much wiggle language to me.
Agreed. Upon cross-examination, first question out of my mouth, isn't it true that you cannot say with the scientific certainty that he was in place X at this time?
Yeah. And Katie, you do civil rights work. Does this bother you at all, this inability to kind of hide, as it were?
It's so ambiguous, and what we were talking about in our last talk here, that if they oversell it, it has this ring of it being more true than it should be. At least here they're being honest.
They're watering it down a little bit. Yeah. Okay, let's go back in. Okay, so get your map out here. We're going to give you a sense of, I think, where these calls originated, the texts, where they went, why they went where they did. Again, this is the cop who is an expert on cell phones. In this case, we're talking about texts that originated on November 16th, three of them, 7:44, 7:46, 7:47 in the morning, from, apparently, the defendant, Henry Segura, to his wife. However, they have a signature stamped on them that is allegedly from Brandy Peters, Queen Bee, the girlfriend. So, Joseph McBride, let's try and untangle this little web here. If they're forwarded from the victim to the wife by the defendant, what's his purpose? What's going on here?
It certainly calls for speculation.
Yeah, I didn't hear that objection.
No. One would think that, as we were discussing before, kind of off the record here, that it's out of the bag at this point, that the jail is being threatened and he's letting her know in good faith. You could also think that the girlfriend could have grabbed his phone and could have sent a message somehow as well. It's tough to kind of call what happened here.
quick procedural question, Katie. Why not object when the expert is asked, why do you think it would have been signature identified as the victim?
You could object, but then you always run that risk of calling attention to something that you want to just to slide under the boring malaise of all this technical stuff. So if they feel that that's something that's a little vulnerable, maybe they're just trying to be quieted down.
Yeah, we're still going to have to figure out exactly who's talking to whom here, because it's critical to put Mr. Segura in the place where these crimes took place, but it's also important to lay the foundation for why he would have been there. What sort of motivation was involved? Let's take a quick break. We'll come back more on the cell phone issue, and we will discuss. This is the Law and Crime Network.